I'm a defective Omega, yet my pheromone compatibility with the youngest Major General in the Federation is an incredible 99%. During the war, I was his living suppressant. When the war ended, I was discharged and sent home. But only a few days later, I realized I was pregnant. To make sure my child could have legal registration, I decided to marry an alpha. Just as I stepped out of the marriage registry office, the wind outside began to howl. A military aircraft landed steadily, its hatch opening as the Major General stepped down with a dark expression. Inside the registry hall, the normally calm and composed staff wiped sweat from their foreheads, apologizing to me for the third time. I'm terribly sorry, sir. There seems to be a system issue today. It might take a little longer. Would you like to sit for a bit? Seeing the nervous sweat on the young woman's face, I nodded understandingly. It's fine, no rush. Brother, let me help you over there, said the young man beside me, stepping forward anxiously. I brushed his hand away, impatient. It's just a few steps, I'm not an invalid. Only 3 months along, not even showing yet. No need to fuss. The boy's name was Julian. He scratched his head after sitting down. Brother, thank you again. If it weren't for you, my little sister would've. Didn't you agree to marry me? It's a deal, don't overthink it. If it weren't for the strict government regulations requiring Omegas to have a marriage certificate to give birth, I wouldn't have bothered marrying anyone. Julian was an alpha, but his family was poor, and he had a seriously ill sister. He was honest and reliable, a safe, practical choice. There weren't many couples getting married that day. The hall was quiet except for the TV on the wall broadcasting the news. Major General Charles has completed the final battlefield cleanup. With no remaining enemies, he will return to the capital planet tomorrow. The broadcast was accompanied by a half-length photo of a man in uniform. His short hair was neat, his face sharp and handsome, his posture perfectly straight. His cold, piercing eyes stared straight into the camera, carrying a chill that seemed to cut right through the screen. It almost felt like he was looking directly at me. Brother, Major General Charles is so cool, Julian said excitedly. He's a hero of the Federation. I really admire him. Realizing I'd been staring too long, I looked away, rolling my eyes inwardly. Cool, my foot. More like a walking headache. After another half hour, the system still wasn't fixed. I checked the time, getting late. What a waste of my day. Still, it wasn't the staff's fault. I told them I'd come back tomorrow, and under their hesitant looks, turned to leave the registry office. But I had barely taken 2 steps when a gust of wind hit. A military aircraft appeared out of nowhere on the plaza ahead, its black gold hull gleaming even under the cloudy sky. Julian saw it too and gasped. That's Major General Charles's aircraft. He's on our planet. The moment I saw the familiar craft, my temples throbbed. I instinctively grabbed Julian's wrist. Run. Now. Damn it. I didn't think Charles was here for me, but I definitely didn't want to run into him. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. We'd barely moved when someone blocked our path. Charles was still in his combat uniform, sweat glistening at his temples. His usually composed eyes showed an uncharacteristic flicker of panic. Daniel, he said my name as he stepped forward, prying my hand off Julian's wrist. His gaze then settled on my face, his tone cold yet strangely aggrieved. Daniel, you found a new lover fast. Instinctively, I raised my hand and smacked him on the head. Watch your mouth. Call me brother. Charles entered the Alliance Military Academy at 19, joined the war at 20 when the insectoids invaded, and at 21 led a squad of 900 men to break through an encirclement of thousands, earning instant fame. He was strong, brilliant, calm, and, unfortunately, very good-looking, tall, too. But there was one problem: his pheromone level was too high. The intense battles often threw his system into violent imbalance. And me, a nearly 30-year-old, low-quality secondary differentiated Omega with no real achievements. Yet somehow, my pheromone compatibility with his was 99%, making me the best possible suppressant for him. So, 4 years ago, I was officially recruited. Well, I didn't really mind. They promised that as long as I agreed, I'd receive a large severance payment after the war, and early retirement benefits. Who could say no to that? Half a month ago, the war ended. I got my payout and left without looking back. I just didn't realize I was leaving with a child in my belly. The doctor said that for a defective, older Omega like me, if I lost this baby, I might never have another chance. I thought for the length of half a cigarette, and decided to keep the child. Brother, Charles grabbed my wrist, pulling me slightly toward him. I elbowed him away. Don't hug me in public. He eased his strength but didn't let go, glaring at Julian. Brother, why are you marrying him? I couldn't exactly say, because I'm pregnant. That was something I had no intention of letting him find out. So I lied casually. Because it's convenient. I'm 30 already, Can't I get married? Then marry me, brother. Why not me? His grip tightened painfully, almost crushing my bones. I swatted his hand away and said firmly, because you're not suitable. The words seemed to hit him harder than any weapon. Not suitable? Brother, you were in my bed. Before he could finish, I clamped a hand over his mouth. Charles was a public figure, and we were in the middle of a plaza. People were already watching. I gritted my teeth and whispered, Charles, shut up. Any louder and the whole Federation would know our business. Eventually, he got a call. Before leaving, he made me unblock his contact on my comm, then took off in his aircraft. I blocked him again the moment he left. Julian, who'd been silent the whole time, stepped forward cautiously. Daniel, that man. I raised a finger to my lips and shook my head. Julian obediently shut his mouth. I thought my firm attitude would finally make Charles give up. But the next morning, when I opened my door, someone was crouching outside. The moment he heard the door, he jumped up. Brother. Then his eyes shifted past me, widening instantly. Why is he here? Julian scratched his head awkwardly, glancing at me before saying, Hi, I'm Daniel's boyfriend. Julian's voice was timid, and Charles, after years in the army, could hear the uncertainty right away. He snorted, dragged a suitcase from behind him, and squeezed past both of us, saying coldly, Starting today, I'm living here too. I looked at the rising sun outside, then at the aircraft parked not far away. My head started to ache. The first time I met Charles was at the military base. At that time, he had exhausted his mental energy on the battlefield trying to save a comrade. Not long after returning to the base, his pheromones went completely out of control. It was the worst episode he'd ever had. Even the suppressants didn't work. So in a hurry, they matched him with me. That night, I was packed up and sent straight into Charles's room. The room was pitch dark, only a faint light slipping in through the window. That little bit of light was enough for me to see the general mess inside. The room was huge, pillows torn to shreds at the door, a bedside cabinet knocked over, and a large dent smashed into the wall by something heavy. When I stepped forward, a few feathers floated up from the floor. This job might actually be dangerous. After scanning the place quickly, I finally spotted a half-visible figure sitting at the foot of the bed. Charles was sitting on the ground, clutching a blanket in one hand. Slowly, he turned his head toward me. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could feel that icy, dangerous gaze settle on me. Get out. His voice was rough and strained, like it was being dragged out from his throat. Didn't seem like he was happy to see me. I didn't hesitate, turned around and grabbed the doorknob. It didn't move. Locked. I raised my hands helplessly toward him. Doesn't open. Then I slid down against the door, sitting on the floor. My life rule, when you're stuck somewhere, make yourself comfortable. No way out anyway. Might as well get the job done. I released my pheromones, a light scent, like fresh bamboo, letting it drift slowly toward him. I had no idea how long it took, but eventually, the tension in the room began to settle. I finally let out a breath. My stomach, empty since morning, started grumbling. I quietly shuffled forward. There was a food cart nearby. I'd been eyeing it for a while. It was probably prepared for Charles, though he hadn't touched it. At first, I didn't dare make a sound, didn't want to irritate him. But now that his breathing had calmed down, I figured it was safe enough. Without hesitation, I grabbed a sandwich from the tray and took a bite. The ham inside was cold, but edible. I was halfway through when a tall shadow fell beside me. The next second, someone's hand wrapped around the back of my neck. Charles controlled his strength, lifting my chin up. His breath was hot, laced with a strong tea-like scent. It made my head buzz, and the gland at the back of my neck burned uncomfortably. I swallowed what was left of the sandwich, and then my lips went hot. His movements were rough, almost predatory, but at the last second, he held back, didn't break the skin. I mean, it wasn't unexpected, given the situation. But still, a little warning would have been nice. I hadn't even finished my sandwich. The next morning, when I woke up sore and stiff, Charles was already gone. I didn't see him again until dinner that night. He was back in his uniform, the tight design stretched over his chest, highlighting muscles that made me stare a second too long. He noticed. Charles strode straight toward me, eyes scanning me from head to toe. I awkwardly smiled back. He paused, then looked away, clearing his throat like he was trying to sound casual. I'm heading back to the battlefield. You can stay in my room. All right. Just before he left, I caught a glimpse of his ears, slightly red. And that's how I ended up living at the base. At first, Charles resisted me completely, but later, whenever his pheromones went out of control, he'd hold on to me like his life depended on it. The episodes went from once every 2 months to once or twice a month, more and more frequent. The job was easy, sure, but exhausting. At my age, I honestly started worrying about my back giving out. When that memory ended, I sighed and turned back into the house. Charles had already located my bedroom and moved his luggage in. Despite being raised in a wealthy family, his father was commander of the First Legion. Charles's noble arrogance showed no matter how hard he tried to hide it. After inspecting the room, he finally relaxed, the tension in his face softening back into that unfairly handsome expression. Then, with his long legs, he crossed the room in 2 strides, wrapped his arms around me, and buried his face into my neck. "Brother, I missed you so much," he murmured. Like a big, needy puppy. I pushed him away helplessly. "Aren't you supposed to return to the capital planet? The news had said he was leaving today." "I'm on leave, brother." "Leave?" Right after a war ended, when everyone was being rewarded, and he just took leave. I flicked my finger against his forehead. "Now, you sure your brain's working?" He caught my hand before I could pull back, pressed a kiss to my fingers, and smiled softly. "It's fine, brother. I'm still young. Climbing too high too fast isn't a good idea." I could tell he knew what he was doing, so I didn't press further. After all, it wasn't my place to interfere. The real problem was how to get rid of him. But when I saw the faint sparkle in his eyes, the words I'd wanted to say died in my throat. Forget it. Maybe he'll leave on his own in a few days. The planet we lived on was far from the capital, mild climate all year round, quite a few people. To avoid Charles, I'd bought this house on the outskirts. It came with a big wheat field, apparently planted by the previous owner out of boredom. Now it was lush and green, almost ready for harvest. Julian, who'd been watching us, popped a piece of bread into his mouth before dashing off to pull weeds in the field. My eyes followed him, drawn to the golden waves of wheat swaying gently in the wind. "Peaceful, beautiful, isn't it?" Charles's voice came from behind me. I nodded. "Yeah, it is." He let out a soft chuckle, grabbed my chin, and kissed my cheek, before suddenly rolling up his pants and stepping straight into the field, acting like a child. I stared for a few seconds, then found a lounge chair and sat down. The late morning sun was warm, the breeze made my eyes heavy. Every now and then, I'd open my eyes and see him in the wheat field, muscles flashing when his shirt lifted slightly. This guy. And just like that, Charles ended up staying. He helped me weed the field, napped with me in the sun, lazy, peaceful days. Julian, a university student, spent most of his time at classes or the hospital with his sister. He hadn't planned to live here. I was the one who insisted he stay, because if it was just me and Charles, I might give in. I could tell how much he cared for me, but we weren't meant to be, not by background, not by nature. Charles was born into privilege, handsome, and already a decorated hero. And me, an orphan, middle school education, a defective omega with scars all over, not gentle, not soft. Like his childhood friend once said, "I just got lucky our pheromones matched 99%. The noon sun was hot. I half closed my eyes, absently touching my stomach. Then a warm hand slid over mine. "What's wrong, brother? Does your stomach hurt?" I paused, then guided his hand under my shirt. "Just a bit bloated. Help me rub it." His hand was warm and gentle on my skin. The peaceful moment didn't last long. His communicator started ringing again. He ignored it. "Why not answer?" I asked. "Spam call. Not important." A few minutes later, it rang again. Charles frowned, glanced at the ID, and finally answered. I couldn't hear what was said, but his expression grew darker with every second. When the call ended, he turned to me. "Brother, something came up at the Legion. I have to return to the capital for a while." I waved my hand. "Go on. It's about time anyway." 5 days after Charles left, I realized it was getting close to the time my pregnancy would start showing. I hadn't been able to register the marriage while Charles was still around. If I didn't do it soon, the baby might end up without a legal ID. But Julian's sister's condition had worsened, keeping him at the hospital. So the registration was postponed again. I touched my stomach, reading Julian's message on my communicator. "Brother, I can come back tomorrow." I replied. "It's okay. Stay with your sister for now." Scrolling up, I saw Charles's last message, the one he sent when he arrived at the capital. After that, nothing. I hadn't blocked him this time, because, deep down, I knew I was waiting. Charles's love burned too bright, like a flame that made even a moth like me want to draw closer. Then suddenly, a news alert popped up. The youngest Major General Charles will be engaged in a month. His fiancée is his childhood friend, an Omega. Below was an old photo, the two of them on the day Charles entered the military academy. He looked younger, frowning slightly, already with that impatient look in his eyes. It was the first time I'd ever seen a picture of him from before. Strangely, I didn't feel heartbroken, just instinctively took a screenshot. A little petty, cropped the omega out. That's probably all I can do now. After all, Charles isn't mine anymore. When it finally sank in that Charles wasn't coming back, I figured it was time to get the marriage paperwork done. But life has a way of throwing surprises at you. We'd just arrived at the registration office when Julian got a call. His face turned pale, and within seconds, he was hurrying toward the hospital. He kept apologizing as he left. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. There's an emergency at work." "Then go," I told him. "Don't waste time." He gave me one last, guilty glance before rushing away. I didn't chase after him. I took my time, found a quiet place for lunch, ate slowly, and only headed home when the city lights began to dim. Even in this age of star travel, personal aircraft still cost too much, and with a baby on the way, saving every credit mattered. So I took public transit home. When I reached my building, I noticed two strangers crouching by the door. The moment they saw me, they stood up, and that scent, sharp, heavy, unmistakably alpha, hit me like a wave. "Who are you?" My guard shot up. I took a step back, one hand covering the side of my neck, because of my damaged gland, and Charles's long-term marking. Other alpha's pheromones barely affected me, but I could still feel the sting, a faint, pulsing ache under my skin. They grinned at me, crude and mocking. "Daniel, right? Don't tell me you don't know who you pissed off." They started toward me. I didn't hesitate. My fingers found the dagger strapped to my thigh. I'd spent years at the base, not just lying around. Charles had trained me well. Two trash alphas like these, easy. I lunged. In less than a minute, both of them were bleeding and scrambling away, yelling curses as they fled. I almost chased them, to hand them over to the police, at least, but a sharp pain tore through my lower abdomen. I froze, then stumbled back inside. The ache from my gland was growing worse. I knew I needed soothing, badly. Without a permanent mark, and pregnant as I was, my body craved Charles's pheromones like air. Usually, medicine helped. Tonight, it didn't. Half an hour later, the pain was still there, twisting deeper. Maybe the fight had scared the baby, so I went to the bottom drawer, dug out the shirt Charles had left behind. His scent, that warm, faint tea fragrance, wrapped around me, and the pain began to fade. Sleep took me before I realized it, curled up in his scent like a cocoon. When I woke again, morning light was spilling across the sheets. Before I opened my eyes, I felt warmth on my chest, a steady breath, a familiar heartbeat. My hand brushed against skin. I froze. Then, "Charles," he stirred, half asleep, dark circles under his eyes. Just 5 more minutes," he murmured. "I'm so tired." His arm tightened around my waist, pulling me against him. He even patted my back, like before. My mind went blank. How was he here? Wasn't he supposed to be engaged to someone else? I wanted to pull away, but the exhaustion on his face stopped me. So I stayed, silent, still. His scent was familiar, comforting, but I couldn't fall back asleep. I just watched him breathe, watched the lines of his face soften. Only when he drifted into deep sleep, did I slip away, gently moving his arm aside. In the kitchen, Julian was making breakfast. "You're back too?" I asked, surprised. He smiled nervously. "Morning, Daniel. Feeling better? How did you know I wasn't well?" He brought over 2 plates, looking a little sheepish. "When I came back last night, I smelled blood outside the house. It scared me half to death. Your door wasn't locked, and your pheromones were unstable." Then Major Charles called. Julian's voice dropped, so I told him. He came back right away. I exhaled softly. So that's why Charles had returned. By noon, he was still asleep. Curiosity got the better of me. I went back to the bedroom. Charles had always been an early riser, a soldier's discipline, but when I opened the door, a faint smell of blood lingered in the air. Before I knew it, I was sitting on the bed, lifting the hem of his shirt. His hand caught mine halfway. Sleep still clouded his eyes. His voice low and hoarse. "Hey, I'm fine. Just let me rest, okay?" I didn't listen. When I pulled his shirt up, I froze. Bandages wrapped around his torso. Crimson stains bled through near his waist. He tried to lower the fabric again, but I stopped him. I turned him slightly. The blood had spread across his back. Dark, dried, terrifying. "What happened?" My voice shook. It was the first time I'd seen him this badly hurt. Even on the battlefield, he'd always healed before coming to see me, because he knew I couldn't stand the sight of blood. He pressed his forehead lightly against my stomach. "I'm fine," he whispered. "Fine." My hands trembled over his bandages. I didn't even know where to start. He caught my hand and squeezed it gently. "It's just surface wounds, already treated. Looks worse than it is." "How did it happen?" He kissed my fingers softly. My dad. My heart lurched. He chuckled weakly. Don't worry, it's not because of you. Someone in the Corps was spreading rumors. About me. About us. My father hit me to make it look like he was on their side. Rumors? I thought of the news headline. The one saying he was engaged. Yeah, they said I was marrying someone else. He frowned, voice soft, hurt, completely false. But I barely heard him. All I could feel was panic. You can't stay here, I said suddenly. You have to go. Now. He blinked, confused. Why? I didn't explain. I just grabbed his arm. Please, you can't stay here. Leave before it's too late. I'd been in the base too long. Long enough to forget what safety even meant. But those two alphas yesterday, they'd been sent for me, and I already knew by whom. No one outside a select few even knew about us. But if someone had connected the dots, if they found out what I used to be, Charles would be dragged into it. Still, he wouldn't budge. He lay back down, groaning dramatically. Ow, ow, that hurts. Then wrapped his arms around my waist again, refusing to let go. I sighed. There was no winning with him. After a moment, he asked, what really happened last night? Nothing, I lied. Just a couple of thugs. I scared them off. He nodded slowly, as if believing me. Oh, I breathed out. I couldn't tell him the truth. About my past. About the blood and the darkness I'd left behind. Maybe, I thought, maybe they wouldn't find him. But then, Julian burst through the door, face pale. Daniel, the hollow screen, look at the news. Charles's expression hardened instantly. He pulled up the projection. From where I stood, I saw the headline glowing in red. The youngest Major General rejects his arranged engagement, for a convicted Omega. Before I turned 24, I had always been a Beta. Even though the alliance was vast and advanced, there were still many planets left behind by progress. I grew up on one of them. From the orphanage, I went straight to a repair shop, spending every day doing repetitive labor, living a life where you could see the end from the very beginning. Until 24, when I met an arrogant, self-absorbed alpha. His aircraft malfunctioned and crashed on our planet. With no local facility capable of fixing it, he came to our humble workshop. From that day on, he began to pester me relentlessly. He told me to go with him, to the higher, wealthier planets. I refused. He just smiled faintly, said nothing, and insisted on treating the whole workshop to drinks as a thank you for repairing his ship. I was cautious at first, but seeing everyone else relaxed, I let my guard down. I didn't realize that, to some people in a place like ours, money could buy anything. That alpha had bribed everyone in the workshop. Someone slipped something into my drink. A drug that could force a beta into heat. I noticed something was wrong and stumbled outside. He followed me. At a corner, he caught up, pressing me against the wall. The air was thick with his scent, oppressive and consuming. My whole body trembled as my second differentiation began against my will. But years of physical labor had made me strong. Just as he realized what was happening and reached toward my neck gland, I pushed him away with all my strength. He staggered back 2 steps, and was hit by a speeding bike. In that dirty, dim alley, under the flickering light, the ground was covered with blood that wouldn't stop flowing. Later, I was sent to prison. They said the alpha had died. His family was powerful, and they demanded my execution. The surveillance camera had conveniently malfunctioned. There was nothing to prove I had acted in self-defense. My lawyer clung to one fact to save me, that I had been forcibly induced into a second differentiation. Then, during testing, they found my pheromone compatibility with Charles was 99%. I was redeemed by the military. They said if I helped Charles stabilize his pheromone disorder, I'd be released and would never have to return. I agreed. I thought I could hide, that if I stayed on a small planet, they would never find me. But I was wrong. Less than a month later, they came. And they dragged Charles into it too. The news reports were brutal. They said I was a murderer, that I had only approached Charles out of fear of dying, that I had deceived him. I tried to cover the blinding light from the screen, but my hands were weak. I wanted to explain, but no sound came out. Then Charles's communicator began to ring. Messages poured in, one after another. It was from his childhood friend, an Omega. Major Charles, I knew that Omega was trouble. He never loved you. He just didn't want to go back to prison. Why are you still defending him? He's a murderer. They were right, in a way. I was a murderer. Even if I hadn't meant to, that alpha was dead. I shouldn't have let Charles find me. I'd only dragged him into my mess. I got out of bed, trying to find a place to hide. But before I could, someone gripped my wrist tightly. The next second, I was pulled into Charles's arms. He held me so tightly it almost hurt, as if he wanted to make sure I couldn't disappear again. A drop of hot tear fell onto my neck. His voice was hoarse. Thank God our compatibility is so high. His words brought me back to reality. You're not disgusted? I asked blankly. Disgusted? Why would I be? I'm a murderer. Charles lifted his head, meeting my eyes. How could I ever hate you for surviving? I only thank fate that it left you alive. Then softly, almost like a vow, he added, and I believe you. Julian had already left the room. When I met Charles's gentle gaze, my eyes burned hot and tears spilled uncontrollably. I didn't mean to, I stammered. And under his quiet reassurance, I told him everything. When I finished, his expression darkened for a moment. Then he kissed the corners of my eyes, wiping my tears away. This wasn't your fault, he said quietly. The room felt smaller, filled with the faint scent that belonged only to him. When I finally calmed down, I grabbed his hand nervously. What about the news? What will you do now? Charles had refused promotion after the war, though there were still people eager to see him fall. It's fine, brother, he said, ruffling my hair. They're really after my father. This kind of thing, just noise. It won't touch me. His family had earned too much glory during the war, drawing envy and fear from others. Charles had even asked for leave to avoid conflict, but they still hadn't let his family go. After a pause, Charles said softly, Brother, I've decided to leave the military. Why? I asked, startled. Is it because of me? No, he said with a small laugh, pulling me close until I was sitting against his chest. His voice softened, tinged with something childlike. I never really wanted to be a soldier. My father pushed me into it. Maybe this is my chance to stop. He hesitated, then smiled. I'm lazy, you know. I just want to stay with you every day, spend the rest of my life by your side. His sudden honesty made me laugh despite myself. I pinched his waist lightly. Be serious. I am serious, he said, chuckling. I'm planning our future. We'll start a small company, maybe adopt a child. As long as you're with me, my life will be complete. A child. I almost forgot. There was already one. I placed his hand over my abdomen. My voice trembled slightly. Actually, I'm already pregnant. For a moment, he froze. Then, before I could react, he held me so tightly I could barely breathe. His voice trembled with disbelief. Really? Really, I said quietly. Almost 4 months. He cupped my face, and for a moment, everything stilled. His eyes softened with something wordless, something that made the world quiet around us. He pressed his forehead against mine. I love you, he whispered. I kissed the corner of his eye, returning the words. I love you too, Charles. When I woke up again, it was already morning. The news that had accused me was gone. Now, they were talking about Charles instead, accusing him of using his family's power to erase everything, calling him irrational, lovesick. Just as I was scrolling, the door opened and Charles peeked in. Seeing I was awake, he walked over and sat by the bed. He kissed my cheek lightly. Sleep well? I nodded, then caught his hand. That news from yesterday, you're not going to explain anything? He just smiled. Why bother? He said, brushing my lips with his thumb. Let them talk. We have better things to do, like taking care of our baby. And for the first time in a long while, I laughed. Charles's extra chapter. When my pheromone disorder got out of control, the commander assigned me an omega whose compatibility with me was supposedly 99%. Unbelievable. Depending on an omega during wartime, what nonsense. I smashed everything in my quarters. 2 hours later, they locked an omega inside my room. I told him to leave. He really tried, but the door was locked. I thought he was quiet and obedient, until the air filled with the scent of fresh bamboo. That damn omega, he was trying to tempt me with his pheromones, and I lost control. When I woke up the next morning, I actually felt refreshed. That omega might not be as docile as he looked, but he was useful, and honestly, kind of adorable. Maybe keeping him wasn't such a bad idea. Half a month later, fine, I'll admit it. Daniel is sweet and beautiful, even when he gets a little temperamental. Actually, that's kind of cute. The war dragged on, and my pheromones flared up again. I needed to be near him. He was the only one who could calm me. Time flew by so fast. 4 years passed in a blink, but it was worth it. We won. And once everything settled, I was finally going to marry him. Except, when I came back, he was gone. As if he could ever escape me. Then I heard he was planning to marry someone else. Impossible. His identity had been linked to mine long ago. I wanted to see which fool dared to steal him from me. Turns out, Daniel had lied. He barely even knew that man, yet still planned to get married. Something was off. He was hiding something. I had to find out what it was. Pregnant? He was pregnant. Why didn't he tell me? Was he really planning to give birth in secret? No, I couldn't act rashly. Daniel was always the kind to keep things buried deep inside. I had to wait for him to tell me himself. Meanwhile, the officials on the capital planet started causing trouble again. I went back to deal with them. I transferred Julian's sister to a military hospital. He agreed to act as my eyes and take care of Daniel for me. Then, my father's men beat me half to death. He said it was for show, but I think he enjoyed it. While I was still cleaning my wounds, Julian messaged me. He said Daniel wasn't feeling well, and there were traces of blood outside the house. My heart nearly stopped. I dropped everything and rushed back. Thankfully, Daniel was fine. It was just the baby, needing my pheromones again. I touched his belly and whispered, "Little one, if you scare your dad like this again, I'll scold you the moment you're born." Then Daniel noticed my injuries. And of course, he also saw that stupid news rumor about me getting married. But Daniel, he never says what he really feels. He looks so calm, yet his eyes always seem to say, "I'm worried. I care about you. I like you so much, but I can't say it out loud. Idiot. My beautiful, stupid brother." Then I found out about what he'd gone through in the past. That bastard Alpha. If I ever find his grave, I'll dig it up myself. But maybe because of that, Daniel finally opened up to me. He cried. He told me everything he'd hidden. Even the truth about the baby. I pretended not to know. Otherwise, he would have been mad. And while his heart was still soft, I marked him for life. Now he'll never be able to run away again. He fell asleep, exhausted. While he slept, I used my father's authority to retrieve the deleted files. I saw the 24-year-old Daniel. I deleted every bit of news that ever slandered him, sent the old surveillance footage to a lawyer, had the case reopened. Daniel wasn't pardoned because of our compatibility. He was released because he was innocent. I didn't post the footage online. That past was something he never wanted to revisit. I'd protect it, and him. Watching him sleep so peacefully, I couldn't help but think, he's really the cutest thing in the world. Final extra chapter. 6 months later, Daniel gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Fair skin, sharp little nose, definitely born to be a beauty. I looked at him, feeling oddly guilty. I'd sworn I'd scold the little brat once he was born, but when those big, round eyes blinked up at me, I melted completely. He's definitely going to be a gorgeous little Omega one day, I thought. My heart softened, overflowing with warmth. I spoiled him endlessly. 18 years passed in a flash. The kid grew tall, broad-shouldered, and ended up differentiating into an alpha. I was devastated. I threw myself into Daniel's arms and pretended to cry. Daniel just stroked my hair and comforted me softly. "How about we have another one?" I peeked up, hiding a sly grin. Exactly what I was hoping to hear.